Dear listeners, I welcome you to my channel. If you like my work, please subscribe to the channel, like this video and write a comment. This helps the video to promote and motivates you to try harder every day. If you want to support the channel financially, the link is in the description and in the profile header. Thank you. Enjoy listening. The city was drowning in routine. The hum of traffic, the chatter of pedestrians, the occasional wail of a siren slicing through the air, all blended into the familiar symphony of urban life. To Adam Carter, it was just another ordinary morning. He shuffled out of bed, stretched, and padded barefoot to the bathroom. The cold tiles sent a shiver up his spine as he reached for the faucet, twisting it absent-mindedly. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a guttural gurgle, the pipes came to life. A thick, black liquid sputtered out, splashing into the white porcelain sink. Adam jerked his hand away, watching in stunned disbelief as the dark fluid swirled, sluggish and opaque. It carried an acrid, metallic stench, like rust and decay. His stomach churned. "What the hell?" he muttered, stepping back. He flipped the faucet off and on again, hoping for a different result. The black water continued to flow. His first thought was a plumbing issue, contaminated pipes, maybe construction work interfering with the system. But as he stood there, the liquid thickened, taking on an almost oil-like consistency. He grabbed his phone, opening a news app, scrolling frantically for any report. Nothing. A quick glance at the mirror reflected his furrowed brows and the deepening worry in his eyes. He turned away, stepping into the kitchen. Maybe the other taps were unaffected. He twisted the sink handle, black water. He checked the bathroom again, same result. Even the shower was spewing out the strange, ink-like substance. His phone vibrated. A text from his neighbor, Jenna. "Jenna, hey, do you have black water coming out of your pipes?" Adam, "Yeah." "You too?" "Jenna, everyone in the building does." What the hell is going on? Panic settled into his chest like a stone. If it wasn't just his apartment, then this was bigger than a simple plumbing problem. He opened social media. The local news hashtag was already flooding with reports from all over the city. People posting videos of their sinks, showers, even public fountains spewing out the same black substance. Then came the first report of someone drinking it. A man, an older gentleman, according to a shaky cell phone video, had taken a sip from a water bottle before realizing its contents had turned dark. His reaction had been immediate. He collapsed, convulsing violently on the pavement, his skin turning a sickly gray. The person filming screamed as the man's body spasmed, his fingers twisting unnaturally, his eyes rolling back into his skull. Then, silence. Adam gripped the edges of the sink, his breath shallow. His throat felt dry, but he dared not drink from the contaminated tap. A creeping sense of dread settled into his bones. More reports flooded in. A mother in a distant neighborhood had made tea for her child before realizing the water was black. The child had taken only a few sips before collapsing. The footage showed something grotesque, his limbs jerking erratically, his face contorting into something inhuman. The next video was even worse. A woman, disoriented and trembling, had drunk the water and changed before the camera's lens. Her eyes darkened, veins bulging under her skin as her mouth twisted into a grimace that was no longer human. And then she lunged at the person filming. Adam shut his phone, a cold sweat forming on his brow. He backed away from the sink, staring at the black liquid with newfound terror. The water was no longer just a utility, it was a weapon. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm blared. A scream rang out a few floors below him. The city was waking up to a nightmare, and Adam had no idea how it would end. The morning haze was lifting, but the city had already begun to spiral into chaos. Adam stood frozen in his apartment, his hands gripping the windowsill as he peered down at the street below. What had started as isolated incidents were now multiplying at an alarming rate. People staggered through the streets, their bodies contorting, their skin graying. The ones who had ingested the black water moved in jerky, unnatural ways, as if their limbs no longer obeyed the laws of human motion. Their faces twisted in silent screams, their eyes sunken and blackened. Some collapsed entirely, writhing on the pavement, while others rose, their movements eerily synchronized, drawn by some unseen force. A loud bang echoed through the hallway outside his apartment. Adam turned sharply, his breath hitching. Another thud, followed by a strangled cry. He hesitated, every instinct screaming at him to stay put. Then, a voice, weak and desperate. "Help, please." Cautiously, Adam unlocked the door, opening it just enough to peek outside. Jenna was there, her hands pressed against the wall for support. Her usually bright hazel eyes were wide with terror, her face pale. A deep gash marred her forehead, blood trickling down her cheek. "Jenna!" Adam swung the door open and pulled her inside, locking it behind them. "What happened? Are you okay?" She winced, clutching her arm. "People, down the hall. They drank it, Adam. I saw them change. It's not just sickness. It's something else. Something wrong." Adam led her to the couch, grabbing a clean towel to press against her wound. "Did you drink any?" he asked, his voice laced with urgency. She shook her head. "No. But I saw my neighbor, Mr. Collins. He took one sip before he started seizing. Then she broke off, her breath shaky. He got up, but he wasn't himself. His skin turned this awful color, and his mouth, it was like he was trying to scream, but no sound came out. Then he lunged at his wife. I ran before I could see what happened next." Adam swallowed hard. "This is spreading too fast. We need to find a way out of the city." Jenna nodded but winced again, gripping her arm. "We can't be the only ones who haven't drunk it. There have to be others. Maybe the government will step in. The military, something. They have to." Adam wasn't so sure. His phone buzzed with an emergency alert. He grabbed it, his eyes scanning the message. "Emergency broadcast. Avoid all tap water. Do not ingest. Stay indoors. Await further instructions." His stomach twisted. That was it? No explanation, no plan? Just a vague warning? It was too late for thousands of people who had already consumed the black water. Outside, sirens blared, but they were intermittent, almost hesitant, as if even the emergency responders didn't know how to proceed. The screams, however, continued to rise. Then, a shattering crash from downstairs. Adam and Jenna exchanged glances before rushing to the window. A group of people, if they could still be called that, had broken through the glass doors of the apartment building's entrance. Their movements were erratic, their fingers clawing at the walls as they dragged themselves inside. The infection, transformation, whatever this was, had reached their doorstep. Adam cursed under his breath. "We have to go. Now." Jenna struggled to her feet, nodding. "Where?" Adam's mind raced. The grocery stores would be ransacked by now. The police stations? Overwhelmed. Hospitals? Probably the worst place to go. Then it hit him. The reservoir. If any clean water still exists, it'll be there. Jenna hesitated. But how do we get there? The streets. A sudden, guttural shriek cut through the air. A sound that didn't belong to anything human. Adam turned back to the window. One of the creatures had lifted its head to the sky, its mouth stretching impossibly wide. Its skin was cracked, black veins spreading like ink beneath its surface. Then, as if answering a silent command, every infected in sight turned in unison. Their eyes locked onto the apartment building. Adam's blood ran cold. They had been seen. "Run," he shouted, grabbing Jenna's hand. They barely made it out the door before the creatures charged. The moment Adam and Jenna burst into the stairwell, they knew they had only seconds before the infected reached their floor. Their frantic footsteps echoed off the concrete walls as they descended, skipping steps, nearly tripping in their haste. The distant sound of crashing and inhuman screeches signaled that the creatures had breached the upper floors. Adam's heart pounded in his ears. He yanked open the door to the lobby, quickly scanning the area. The large glass windows were cracked from where the creatures had forced their way inside. A few lifeless bodies lay sprawled across the floor, neighbors who had either succumbed to the infection or had been caught in the chaos. The air was thick with the coppery scent of blood and something worse, the putrid, oily stench of the black water. Jenna gripped his arm. "We need to move." They darted through the lobby, careful to avoid the growing pools of dark liquid seeping from burst pipes and toppled water coolers. As they reached the front entrance, a low, guttural growl made Adam freeze. From behind the reception desk, a figure slowly rose. It had once been the building's security guard, but his flesh was now stretched taut, his skin marred by deep blackened veins. His mouth hung open as if attempting to scream, but all that came out was a wet, choking sound. His bloodshot eyes locked onto them. Then he moved. With unnatural speed, the creature lunged over the desk, knocking over a chair as it crashed forward. Adam barely had time to react before Jenna yanked him toward the exit. They burst onto the street, the morning light doing little to make the scene before them feel any less nightmarish. The city was no longer the one they had known. Cars were abandoned in the middle of the streets, some doors still open, their occupants missing. Fires raged from shattered storefronts. People, those who were still human, ran in all directions, their screams merging into one collective cry of desperation. Adam grabbed Jenna's hand, pulling her toward a side street. "We have to get off the main road." They sprinted through an alley, the sounds of destruction muffled slightly by the surrounding buildings. As they emerged on the other side, they nearly collided with a man clutching a baseball bat. His clothes were torn, his eyes wild with paranoia. "Are you?" Adam started, but the man cut him off. "Did you drink it?" His voice was hoarse, his grip tightening around the bat. Jenna shook her head, raising her hands. "No, we haven't." The man hesitated, his breath coming in sharp gasps. "Good. Then maybe you've got a chance. The whole damn city's falling apart. No one knows what's happening. The news stopped broadcasting an hour ago. They're saying it's in everything now. Not just the taps. Bottled water, fountains, even the rain." Adam's stomach twisted. "How do you know?" The man gestured to a small radio clip to his belt. Some emergency broadcast was still running before the signal cut. They said the contamination's spreading faster than they thought possible. "Whatever this is, it's not natural." Jenna swore under her breath. "Then we need to get out of the city. The reservoir, there might still be clean water there." The man let out a bitter laugh. "You really think you can make it that far? Have you seen what's out here? The second those things see you, they don't stop. They don't slow down. They just come for you." Adam clenched his fists. "We have to try. Do you have a car?" The man hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, a few blocks down. But if we're doing this, we move fast. No stopping. No hesitating." Jenna exchanged a glance with Adam. "Let's go." As they moved, the air around them was filled with distant screams and the unholy shrieks of the transformed. The city was no longer a place of order, it was a battlefield. And survival was the only rule left. The city streets were an apocalyptic wasteland. Fires burned unchecked, their smoke curling into the darkening sky, casting an eerie orange glow over the ruined buildings. Car alarms blared intermittently, creating a discordant soundtrack of chaos. The distant echoes of shattering glass and blood-curdling screams never stopped. Adam, Jenna, and their new companion, Eric, moved quickly, keeping to the shadows as they made their way toward Eric's car. Every few steps, Adam glanced over his shoulder, half expecting the twisted figures they had left behind to come barreling after them. "So far, so good," Jenna whispered, her grip on the makeshift weapon she had picked up, a rusted metal pipe, tightening. Eric snorted. "Don't jinx us." As if on cue, a low, guttural moan drifted through the air, closer than before. They all froze. Then they saw them. A cluster of infected shambled into view at the intersection ahead. Their once human forms were barely recognizable now, their faces stretched into grotesque masks of suffering. Their eyes, black as tar, glowed faintly, like something alive was writhing beneath their skin. Their fingers twitched, their movements jerky yet disturbingly purposeful. One of them sniffed the air. Then, its head snapped toward them. The creature let out a strangled cry, its throat convulsing as a thick, dark liquid dripped from its mouth. As if summoned by the sound, the others turned as well. Then they ran. "Move!" Adam shouted, pushing Jenna forward as Eric fumbled with his keys, trying to unlock the car up ahead. The infected sprinted toward them, their limbs flailing unnaturally fast. The way they moved sent an instinctive, primal terror coursing through Adam's veins. They weren't just rabid, they were hunting. Eric reached the car first, yanking open the driver's side door. "Get in!" Jenna dove into the back seat while Adam barely managed to slam his door shut before the first creature reached them. It threw itself at the car with enough force to shake the vehicle, its hands clawing at the windows, smearing them with black streaks. More followed, surrounding them in a writhing mass of corrupted flesh. "Drive! Drive!" Jenna screamed. Eric didn't need to be told twice. He twisted the key, and the engine roared to life. Without hesitation, he floored the gas pedal. The car lurched forward, crushing at least two of the infected beneath its tires with sickening crunches. The others scrambled after them, their howls piercing the air. "They're not stopping!" Adam yelled, looking through the rear window. The creatures were relentless, sprinting after them, some dropping to all fours like animals. "I'm going as fast as I can," Eric barked, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Where's this reservoir?" Jenna pointed toward the highway ahead. "If we can get out of the city, it should be about 15 miles north." Eric swerved around an overturned truck, barely avoiding a burning wreck. "And what if it's already contaminated?" Adam swallowed hard. "Then we're screwed." They sped through the city, dodging abandoned cars and wreckage. The further they got from downtown, the fewer signs of life, or unlife, they saw. The infected gradually disappeared in the rearview mirror, their howls fading into the distance. For a brief moment, silence settled inside the car, broken only by their ragged breaths. Then, the first raindrop splattered against the windshield. Jenna stiffened. "No! No, no, no!" Adam watched as more droplets fell, streaking down the glass. The rain was dark. Not just dirty. Black. "Oh, hell no," Eric muttered, turning on the wipers. The smears left behind were thick and oily, like ink. Jenna pressed a hand to her mouth. "It's everywhere." Adam's mind raced. The infected. Their eyes, their veins, everything about them looked as if it had been filled with this substance. And now it was falling from the sky. The water was the disease. Eric cursed. "We have to get out of this before it soaks into the ground." But it was too late. The first signs of change were immediate. The puddles on the streets darkened, their surfaces rippling as though something was moving beneath them. Then, the corpses they had passed, ones that had remained lifeless before, began to twitch. One by one, the bodies jerked upright. The rain was bringing them back. "Floor it!" Adam shouted. Eric slammed on the gas, the tires skidding on the wet pavement before finding traction. The car shot forward as the reanimated dead turned their heads in unison, black liquid spilling from their gaping mouths. And then they ran. Not just at the car, but toward the city, toward any remaining survivors who had thought they were safe inside. The rain was spreading the infection faster than any of them had imagined. As they sped down the highway, the realization settled in like a lead weight in Adam's stomach. There was no escaping this. There was no water left that was safe. The road stretched before them, slick with the black rain. The windshield wipers groaned against the thick, oily liquid, barely clearing enough visibility for Eric to navigate the abandoned highway. The headlights carved out a narrow path through the darkness, illuminating wrecked cars, toppled street signs, and the occasional motionless body. Motionless until the rain touched them. Jenna gripped the edge of her seat, watching in horror as the corpses twitched and convulsed, their veins blackening as though ink was being injected straight into their bloodstream. Their eyes snapped open, glowing like voids. One by one, they turned toward the car. "Eric, drive faster," Adam urged, his voice strained. "I'm already pushing it." Eric snapped, his knuckles white as he clutched the steering wheel. "If we go any faster, we'll lose control on this sludge." The infected broke into a sprint, their limbs jerking unnaturally as they pursued. They didn't stumble. They didn't tire. They ran like predators who had just spotted prey. Adam turned in his seat, gripping the pistol they had scavenged earlier from an abandoned police car. He rolled down the window, the stink of the rain immediately assaulting his senses. His hands trembled, but he steadied himself, aiming at the closest creature. He fired. The bullet struck the infected's shoulder, sending it spinning to the pavement. But it didn't stop. It scrambled back to its feet, its bones bending at impossible angles, and resumed the chase. "Headshots. Aim for the head," Jenna shouted. Adam adjusted his grip, took a breath, and fired again. This time, the bullet tore through the creature's skull. It collapsed instantly, twitching for a few moments before going still. "It works," Adam breathed. "But there are too many of them." Jenna pointed ahead, where another horde had gathered on the road, blocking their path. The rain had awakened them all. Eric cursed. "Hold on." The car swerved as he twisted the wheel, aiming for the narrow gap between two wrecked vehicles. The tires screeched against the wet pavement as they barely squeezed through. One of the infected leaped, slamming against the side of the car, its fingers clawing at the window. Jenna screamed as its face pressed against the glass, its mouth stretching too wide, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. Adam fired. The creature's head snapped back, and it slid off the car, disappearing beneath the wheels with a sickening crunch. The highway ahead stretched into the darkness, empty, for now. Eric didn't slow down. "Are we even sure the reservoir is safe?" he asked, his voice tight with panic. "What if it's already contaminated?" Adam shook his head. "We don't know. But it's our only chance." Jenna exhaled shakily. "We need to get off this road. Find shelter. Regroup." Eric hesitated before nodding. "There's a gas station up ahead. If we're lucky, it hasn't been looted yet." They drove in silence for another mile before the dim neon glow of a gas station sign flickered through the darkness. Eric pulled in, parking near the entrance. The station looked abandoned, no lights inside, no signs of movement. Adam loaded another clip into the pistol. "We go in together. Quick and quiet." Jenna grabbed a crowbar from the floor. "Let's move." They stepped out into the rain, hoods up, avoiding the thick puddles of black liquid gathering around their feet. The station doors were unlocked, creaking as Adam pushed them open. The inside was ransacked, shelves overturned, shattered glass covering the floor. But there were supplies. Bottled food. Ammo. Even a few containers of what looked like clean water. Eric wasted no time, grabbing as much as he could. "This'll keep us going for a while." Jenna knelt near the fridge, pressing a trembling hand against a dusty bottle of water. "Do you think this is safe?" Adam frowned, inspecting the label. "We don't have a choice." Then, a sound. A slow, wood-dragging noise from the back of the store. Jenna stood slowly. "We're not alone." Eric raised his shotgun. Adam gripped his pistol tighter. A shadow moved in the dim light of the flickering sign. Then, a figure stumbled into view, a man, soaked in black water, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He looked at them, pleading. "Help me." His eyes were still human, but the veins in his neck had started to darken. The infection was setting in. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, his body convulsed. His hands clawed at his throat. His mouth stretched too wide. And he screamed. The scream that tore from the infected man's throat sent a jolt of terror through Adam's body. It wasn't human, not anymore. It was a guttural, wet gurgle, a cry of something trying to claw its way out of him. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, he lunged. Adam fired instinctively, but the bullet barely slowed the man. His limbs jerked as he charged, black veins pulsing beneath his skin, his face contorted in something between agony and hunger. "Move!" Eric shouted, shoving a shelf down between them and the infected. The thing crashed into the metal racks, sending cans and plastic bottles flying, but it scrambled to its feet, unfazed. More wood dragging sounds echoed from the back of the store. "There's more of them," Jenna cried, gripping her crowbar. Adam grabbed a crate of bottled water and shoved it toward Eric. "We have what we need, let's go." They bolted for the door just as another figure emerged from the darkness, its body twitching unnaturally. Its jaw hung open, black drool spilling onto the floor. It locked onto them, letting out a shrill, unnatural screech. Eric blasted it with his shotgun. The force sent the creature sprawling, but more were coming. The black rain outside hadn't stopped. It was soaking into the ground, feeding whatever horror was spreading through the city. Adam pushed through the door into the storm, his boots splashing through oily puddles. Their car was still waiting, engine running. Jenna skidded to a stop. "We can't drive through this forever. We need a real plan." Eric threw the supplies into the trunk. "We stick to the plan, the reservoir. It's the only place that might still be clean." Adam hesitated, looking at the road ahead. The black rain distorted everything, turning reflections in the puddles into shifting, writhing shapes. Buildings sagged under the weight of decay, windows hollow and dark. The city was collapsing, being consumed by something beyond their understanding. They had to move. Eric slammed the door shut as the infected burst out of the gas station behind them. He gunned the engine, tires screeching against wet asphalt as they sped onto the highway. The creatures gave chase, sprinting unnaturally fast, but the car was faster. Within minutes, the cityscape began to thin, buildings giving way to open road. The highway stretched before them, winding into the misty hills that led to the reservoir. But something was wrong. The further they drove, the darker the sky became. The rain thickened, falling in slow, viscous globs that clung to the windshield like tar. Jenna wiped at the window. "This isn't normal rain." Eric gritted his teeth. "No kidding." Adam reached for the radio, flipping through static-filled channels. Most were silent, but one crackled to life with a distorted voice. "All survivors, stay away, water compromised, no escape, repeat, no safe zones." The signal cut out. A pit formed in Adam's stomach. That means the reservoir could already be. A shape darted into the road ahead. Eric swerved violently. The tires skidded, the car fishtailing before slamming into a guardrail. Metal screeched as the front bumper crumpled, steam hissing from the hood. "Everyone okay?" Eric groaned, rubbing his head. Jenna coughed, pushing herself upright. "Yeah." Adam winced. "We need to move. Now." Outside, the rain was pooling unnaturally in the cracks of the road, forming thick, pulsing veins of liquid darkness. The shape they had nearly hit was gone, if it had ever been there at all. Jenna squinted ahead. "There's a tunnel up there." The tunnel entrance loomed in the distance, its mouth yawning open like a gaping wound in the mountainside. The inside was pitch black, the road disappearing into darkness. Eric exhaled. "We don't have a choice." They grabbed their supplies and moved quickly, the sound of distant screams growing fainter as they left the ruined car behind. The closer they got to the tunnel, the heavier the air felt, thick with something unseen, something wrong. As they stepped inside, the rain sound softened, replaced by eerie silence. Their flashlights flickered weakly, their beams swallowed by the unnatural darkness. Then they heard it. A slow, deliberate sound, like something wet dragging across concrete. It was coming from inside the tunnel. Adam gripped his pistol. "We need to move quietly." Jenna nodded, gripping her crowbar tightly. Eric pumped his shotgun once, a silent promise that they wouldn't go down without a fight. The tunnel stretched deeper than it should have. The walls were slick, damp, pulsing with moisture that smelled like decay. Shapes loomed in the darkness, wrecked cars, abandoned belongings. signs of people who had tried to escape but never made it out. Then, something shifted in the shadows ahead. A cluster of figures stood in the middle of the tunnel, motionless. At first, they looked like ordinary people. But as Adam's flashlight passed over them, he realized the truth. They weren't moving because they weren't alive. They were changing. Their skin bulged, rippling as something moved beneath it. Their mouths stretched into grotesque, gaping holes, black liquid bubbling at the edges. Their limbs twitched, frozen in the process of transformation. Then, as one, they turned toward the light. Their mouths opened in unison. And they screamed.